Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Molesky.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. I'm Brandon Molesky, Pat Micheletti with me. Pat, we are guestless today, which means lots of hockey talk between the two of us. Let's just obviously start off with the Minnesota Wild before we transition into college hockey later in the podcast. I think given all the injuries and COVID stuff, to go 3-0-1 here, even though you got some of your guys back, but still not a full lineup, 3-0-1 in the last four, pretty competitive there in Colorado. A nice little turnaround for this team during a stretch that, could have kind of derailed the season a little bit.
Well, I think so. I think it was, they used that mentality of, hey, we got guys down. I need to be better. I need to be better. We all need to be better. Give a little bit more. And, let's show everybody, that we can win when we're down, three of our major players on our team. And they listen, win, lose, or draw. They're playing extremely hard, and that's what more can you ask? You can't ask for much more than that.
No, I mean, ever since Dean Evason's been here, it's been just a completely different. Not that previous teams weren't working hard, but I think the work ethic has just gone up another notch, and obviously, the speed of which they play, the pace at which they play adds to that. But I also wanted to talk about that aspect of it because now, Pat, with all the games that they had postponed due to COVID, they're going to throw those now into February. The Wild are going to play 40 games in 77 days. And it's a little unfair that other teams aren't going to have to go through that, especially since the Wild really didn't have anything to do with why their games were postponed. It was all their opponents doing. Not that you can't overcome that, but for a team that does play with a lot of pace and has had some injury issues, you almost want this team to put enough points in the bank where maybe, before the playoffs, they don't have to be going full throttle.
We might go back and look at the start of the season where they had that big cushion. Now, it's come back a little, which we all knew was probably going to. That being said, any Minnesota Wild fan out there wondering what the lineup's going to be when Bukestad's back, when Ek is back, when Brodin's back, when Spurgeon's back, I would say don't worry. Just on what you just stated, Brandon, 40 games in 77 days. That's insane. I mean, it really is. And to think that guys are going to be prepared to play every night, mentally, and then on the physical side of things, banged up, you're going to need every player in the taxi squad, everybody on the roster, maybe even dig into the AHL roster deeper at times, as we go along here. I think, Brandon, right now with the schedule, it brings everybody into play. Teams that are maybe 10 points out of a playoff spot, 12, all of a sudden they get on a run. Other teams get hurt or whatever the case may be. They stay healthy, whoever that team may be. I think it's wide open.
Well, and not to mention, hopefully we're on the tail end of the Omicron variant and things start to slow down. We've hit our peak and we're going the other way. But you have COVID issue. You could have COVID issues at some point, or even some of these injuries the Wild have had. I guess they're fortunate to a certain extent that they haven't played as many games with their injuries, right? I mean, if you have someone who's out for 2 weeks during this stretch, you're going to miss 7-8 games, whereas opposed to, a couple weeks ago, if you missed 2 weeks, you might miss 3 games.
Well, Ek has been out almost a month now.
Well, he was hurt and then was ready to come back and then was put on the COVID list. But
so he has missed 5 games.
I don't know the tally, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In that, Okay, so in that normal stretch of time, you can double that to
Yeah,
10.
I think 5 is correct. Yeah, because he missed the day.
You know,
He got hurt in Dallas, and then
so they kind of got lucky there. You know,
yeah,
but they're not going to have that going forward.
no,
And I mean, that's a great point you bring up, and um, and hopefully, you always talk about guys. He said he's coming back. You want guys to come back healthy, and I hope they don't rush Brodeen, whatever that injury is. Make sure he's healthy. Make sure. I'm glad they're waiting on Spurgeon another night. Looks like he's going to play. Miss the game Friday, but play on Saturday. Um, you need your top players in there. With this stretch coming up, it's crazy.
yeah, and they are going to get Joel Eriksson Ek back. It looks like off the COVID list, so he'll be back this weekend. And Pat, we've talked so much about the difference he makes in the lineup, just how much better Greenway and Foligno look on his side to give you kind of a, in the past, Pat, I would have said that to give you a legit second line to go with your top line. But now that Matt Boldy has come up over the last 4 games and him and Fiala together, you kind of have another legit line. And
you do.
I kind of look at this moving forward now. I know it's only 4 games from Boldy, but to me, he looks like he's legit. He looks like a top 6 forward to me. You got a potential here for 3, and your fourth line is going to be as good as anybody else's too. From your first line to the fourth line, you've got quite the potential now with adding Boldy to the lineup and getting Eriksson Ek back with your forward lines.
I agree, and you probably know more about this than I do. I don't know if they'll be able to add another player via a trade or what.
Oh, we're going to talk about that, Pat.
Okay, good. I can't wait to hear, because I want to be educated on that, so I don't say, "Hey, let's go and try to do this for that." But that being said, let's talk about Boldy, Fiala, right, and what they bring to the table. You saw Boldy in training camp and said, yeah, guy looks pretty legit, like a pro. I saw him down in Iowa. I said, yeah, I can confirm that.
He looks better now, though, than when I saw him in training camp.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
in training camp, he looked like an NHLer. Now he looks like a top 6 NHLer.
And that progression should be where it's at now, right? They sent him down, and he learned the game a little bit more, learned how to be a pro a little bit more, got his confidence, whatever. And yeah, he's there now. They have Gaudreau in the middle there now, okay? And like you said, and he's been fine. He's been fine. He's not gonna kill you. He's not gonna wow you. But it sure would be nice to have, somebody a little bit more dynamic with Boldy and Fiala. Okay. That would be a scary line. If
Pat, I came prepared for this topic today, Pat. You were reading into my.
I'm going to shut up now and let you.
But your point, right? I mean, you watch Fiala and Boldy together, and Fiala the last year and a half has basically not had anyone at his level to play with, right? I mean, he's been playing with Gaudreau, he's been playing with Pitlick and those types of players, and moved around the lineup. And maybe there's a little twinkle in his eye now of, I kind of like playing with this Boldy kid. He gets me the puck in places where it can put me in position to score. And that, and then we know how Fiala is when he gets confidence, how he can get going. And I made the comment on Twitter a couple nights ago that said, imagine a legit top 6 center with these two, right? On top of your Kaprizov, Zuccarello line and Hartman, on top of Greenway, Foligno, and Eriksson Ek in that spot. And then your fourth line is going to, whatever it's Sturm and Duhaime. And if you want to go Connor Dewar or whoever else, if you want to throw Gaudreau in there, you can. But to me, you get a top 6 center, and that's legit scary. And I've come prepared for that, Pat, because in previous episodes of Beyond the Pod, we mentioned, maybe acquiring like a Braden Holtby, that kind of a goaltender. I've got some centers for you. And kind of my criteria for what centers to look at are, last year on a contract, because of the wild salary cap situation moving forward. If you're going to bring in a center that has a 2, 3, 4 year deal, that means you're going to have to bring you're gonna have to ship salary out. So I'm trying to bring in a center.
We're being realistic here.
I'm trying to keep the team the way it is right now together and just adding to it as opposed to taking away from the team and adding to it. So, a center that's going to be a free agent this offseason, obviously you're going to have to go after a center that's on a team that's not going to make the playoffs. So here are my three options, and these names have been thrown around, so these names aren't going to surprise you, Pat, but I have three names. I want your opinion on each one. We'll begin with, obviously, I think the biggest find is going to be Claude Giroux, center for the Philadelphia Flyers. He's getting up there in age, Pat. He's 34 years old. Not as productive as he was a couple of years ago, but still, 31 points in 36 games. He's still near a point per game player. He does have an $8.275 million cap hit. The trade deadline is March 21st. So at that point, I counted up the amount of games the Wild will have. They'll have 21 games remaining at that point.
Perfect.
So from a prorated cap version, he would be $2.1 million against the cap. According to Cap Friendly right now, the Wild have $3 million in cap space available. Now, I know that changes, and they've been sending guys to the taxi squad. They've been trying to save as much money as possible. And you could always ship out salary. Let's be, if you ever wanted to get rid of Victor Rask's contract and have some team take it on. But your thought about Claude Giroux at this point of his career, and, probably out of everyone out there, he's the one you'd have to give up the most to get. How much are you willing to give up to get him?
I've heard him speak. I think he desperately wants to win. And I think he's getting to the point where he knows it's not going to happen in Philly this year. They've been talking about moving him, or there's been, maybe they haven't. Broadcasters, sports writers have been talking about, hey, they're going to move him. They're going to move him. Ottawa's been mentioned an awful lot. I don't know if he'd want to go to Ottawa or not, but he will be a free agent, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All the guys I'm saying today will be a free agent.
Yeah. And so I think, I think you're going to have to pay a price to get him. I don't think Philly is going to give him away. It might take a number one to get him. Is that worth the price? I guess it'll all depend where the market is at then. So we can speculate on what it's going to take. Who knows? That changes all the time. But I like him, and man, yeah, he'd be a nice fit there.
All right, center number 2. This guy's a little older. He's 37 years old. I'm amazed he's still producing at his age. We've been kind of predicting his downfall for a couple of years now, but Joel Pavelski, Dallas Stars. He is representing the Stars in the All-Star game. He's having a good season, 38 points in 36 games. He has 16 goals. His cap hit's a little bit smaller than Giroux. He's making $7 million this year. That means his prorated cap hit will be 1.8. Not the fastest guy in the world, and this is kind of a speed team. But Pat, a guy who's phenomenal in the faceoff circle. He'd be your best faceoff guy. He'd be great in the middle of the ice on power plays. Kind of that center spot in front of the goalie. He's phenomenal with his stick in those areas and getting rebounds and screens and deflections and all that type of stuff. He's having a good year in Dallas on a team that's not playing very well.
He was a captain in San Jose. He's a gamer. He's really okay. He's slowed down a little bit, but on the flip side of that, he's probably one of the smartest players in the game. Now, because you have Fiala and Boldy is not the fastest guy, but he can get around the ice. Okay.
Yep.
I think that will alleviate. Put it this way. He's Victor Rask speed-wise, but he's a heck of a lot better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, he's like you said, there's not many players better in front of the net than he is. And he's a great power play guy. And he scores big goals all the time. I don't know. It just gets to a big game. He scores. He would be someone I would look at. Yes.
And you say what you want about the plus minus stat, and there's a lot of flaws to that stat, but he has been a plus every season of his career except for one. And even in Dallas on a bad team right now, he's a plus 10.
Smart player.
He's a very, very smart player. And, let's face it, because of his age, because of his contract, you're not going to have to give up as much to get Pavelski than you would
No.
Claude Giroux.
Oh, absolutely.
The third player, which I know your son is all on board of acquiring at the trade deadline, and he's younger. He's 28 years old. Tomas Hertl of the San Jose Sharks, 20 goals so far this season. He has 35 points in 40 games. His cap hit is at 5.625, so prorated just 1.44, which if you were to acquire him, that you'd have a little bit of space to get somebody else on top of that. I mean, if you get Giroux and even Pavelski to a certain extent, it limits only kind of being able to just bring in that one guy, as opposed to maybe you want a depth defenseman, or maybe you want another goalie. Whereas Hertl, not as much of a cap hit. San Jose, I'm not with him. I'm not sure what his future is. Right? Does San Jose want to keep him? The problem is the Sharks have so much money committed to 3 defensemen. I mean,
Right.
Carlson's making almost $12 million. Brent Burns is up there in cash. They're kind of in a bad financial situation there in San Jose with having so much locked up with those 2 defensemen. I would think a guy like Hertl they'd want to keep around, but can they afford him? I don't know. Obviously, because of his youth, probably have to give up a little bit more. But what are your thoughts on Hertl?
I think it's a pipe dream, to be quite honest. God bless my son. But if they could get him, he would be number one for me. He's an absolute beast. And what he brings where Giroux and Pavelski don't is more muscle and strength down the middle. And I tell you what, if you had an Ek and you had Hertl and then you had Hartman, you got 3 gritty guys who can play. And if you're an opposing coach and you're saying, who am I going to put out against that line? Who am I going to put out against that line or that centerman? Good luck. I mean, that is some nasty guys to play against who can also play. And I think if they could get Hertl, I sign me up.
Well, looking forward, Pat, Bill Guerin and the staff have some decisions to make as to how all in they want to go this year, right? I mean,
right.
To get a guy like Giroux, as you mentioned, you're giving up probably gonna have to give up a first round draft pick for him, and I think Bill Guerin and Judd Brackett value those picks quite a bit, and they've had success. They've had success early on, we haven't seen the rewards, but it appears as if they've had some hits on a lot of their draft picks, and you bring in a guy like Judd Brackett that you value those draft picks maybe more so than others, so they're going to have to decide whether it's worth giving up on the little future a little bit. And as I mentioned before, they have plenty of prospects down in Iowa and throughout their entire all of their draft classes that they can afford to give up a draft pick, but still easier said than done. And to go all in just for this 1 year is also a little bit of a risk too.
Well, it is a risk, but how about this scenario? If they do just decide to go all in, maybe it's because they understand with their cap situation coming up that they're going to have to play a lot of younger guys, right?
Yep.
And one of the losses of this salary cap problem might be Kevin Fiala, right?
Yep.
So if you figure, hey, we might lose Fiala, we have him this year. We get him a center. You know what? Maybe we go for it this year. Knowing we might lose him and the fact that we may have to play a bunch of younger guys making under $1 million on our team for the next couple of years. Good players, but maybe not ready players.
And you don't know. Yeah.
You don't know.
I like Marco Rossi, but who knows if he's going to be top 6 center next season, right? It might be 2-3 years. He's still young. Heck, Boldy's still young. There still might be more out of Boldy we haven't seen yet.
Well, look at and we don't know, if they're a flash in the pan, right? I mean, look at Cole Caulfield. Look at him. Oh, sure. What a mistake the Wild made by not taking Caulfield over Boldy.
He looked good. He looked good last year.
Yeah, he got hot, and this year he's got 2 goals. He's got 2 goals. The last I looked, and you know, 24 games or whatever it was. And so, not to saying that he's not going to, find his way again or whatever, but it's hard. It's hard. These guys are young. They're
Yeah.
20 years old. And just to think you're going to go in and be a superstar and maintain that is wrong. And so back to maybe going all in. We'll see where things land, and if they stay healthy and have a good play, and have an opportunity to make that run, we'll know in the next month, right, with the number of games. So a lot will be determined off of that.
All right, I want to transition to college hockey, but first let's talk about sodastick.com. Go to sodastick.com, get your original Minnesota sports inspired goods. If you haven't seen this stuff yet, you do have to check it out. All their apparel screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. And you're going to love it. We're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. So use the code KFAN for 15% off. That is sodastick.com, sotastick.com. Original Minnesota sports inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. Pat, let's go to you. Your expertise over mine when it comes to college hockey. Let's begin with the Gophers. They got another big series with Michigan this weekend, the number 3 team in the nation. Last week, I talked to you about Jack LaFontaine being signed by the Carolina Hurricanes, so he's out. The Gophers split last weekend with Alaska with Justin Close as the new goalie. The Gophers did not give up a lot of shots in that series, yet they lost that second game in which Close gave up 3 goals on 15 shots. Did you see either of those games last weekend, and what were your first impressions of the new goalie?
I did not. I've seen Justin play. I saw him play in the 2 exhibition games that he played before LaFontaine signed, and ultimately, I think he'll be fine. How are they going to defend in front of him? All those, things play a factor. That being said, Brandon, the loss on Saturday to Alaska dropped them to number 12 in the pairwise. And number 12 in the pairwise is a bubble team.
Yep.
Okay. And Minnesota will be losing 3 players to the Olympics. They have Jackson Nelson, who's going to be out at least a month, maybe more. They've had some COVID issues, but I think everyone's back from that. They've had a couple other lingering injuries. They're going to have to play guys in spots that they haven't played in before, and more responsibility. They've got Michigan coming in this weekend. They're a team that really has to start looking at, hey, are we going to qualify for the NCAA tournament? Now, this is a team that at the beginning of the year said, look at the talent.
Title aspirations.
You look at Michigan and you look at Minnesota, and those are the 2 most talented teams. Now, they're going to have to fight for it, or else win the Big Ten title, whatever, tournament. So it's not going to be an easy run for them. They've got, they started out well with sweeping Michigan State on the road, but now they got to grind it out every weekend, to put themselves in a position to make it.
My Tommies take on number 2 Minnesota State Mankato. They actually play tonight, and then they play Saturday as part of Hockey Day Minnesota. Tommies got their second win of the season last weekend against Ferris State. Mankato split with Northern Michigan. The Tommies were basically blown out by the Mavericks a couple times earlier in the season. I saw the one game at St. Thomas Academy Arena, and it was pretty lopsided. The score ended up being like 5-0, but the Tommies really didn't create much offensively, and were kind of just staying in their own zone the entire time. But I don't know, maybe the elements, maybe the conditions will give them a chance on Saturday outdoors.
Yeah, and they'll be jacked up to play. And listen, you've seen the Tommies play, and I have also. And, they knew this was going to be a bumpy road the first year, but they compete. They compete. They can skate. They've played some games where they potentially should have won. I think of one in Northern Michigan. I think when they played a Bowling Green team that's pretty good. So listen, I expect a really good game. Minnesota State is the creme de la creme right now in college hockey. They really are. They've got great goaltending. No, they're not a flashy team, although I think they're second or third in the nation in goals. But that can be a little misleading. But they're just a well structured team that plays the same way every game, and that's what you're looking for in your team, is to be consistent every night. And to me right now, they're the favorite to win the national championship.
And speaking of the arena news for St. Thomas, I finally saw some reports. I've known about it for quite some time, but since other people are now reporting it, I feel like I can talk about it. That it looks like and I don't think it's official yet, but the old Ford Plant Center area is going to be where their new rink is going to be. And I know you probably don't know the St. Thomas campus as well as I do, Pat, but they don't have space on their campus for a new rink.
They don't.
So even when I was there, like we had to play at State Fairgrounds. They've gone all over the place. They've been at St. Thomas Academy. Like it's just they've had to travel too far to have their own rink.
Yep.
It's not on campus, but the Ford plant, which is a mile down the road, is basically like the best case scenario for where they're. Yep. I know they were looking at places by the Mall of America and other places, and to have it that close to campus is, best case scenario for the Tommy. So. Good location.
Yeah, and I know, and I don't know if this is official yet, but I know that they've hired the architects, the same architects that designed the Pagula Arena at Penn State. And I've been there. It's a beautiful arena. Seats about 5,000, somewhere in there. And if they build anything like that, oh boy, people are going to flock there to go to games. I think it'll be a great venue for section title games. Everything. The girls and the guys. So if they get anything close to that, it'll be a game changer for the program.
All right, Pat. Let's just preview a couple of the other local teams and then get out of here. You can give me your comments on each one. Bemidji State hosts Ferris State this weekend.
You know what? I had Bemidji State on New Year's Day and against St. Cloud, and they've really every year they've had that good goaltender, right? I mean they Bitzer and the kid who's at North Dakota now who transferred. Yep. And they probably don't have as strong a goaltending, but they've got a top line that can really, really play. And they've got a little bit more depth, and they got pretty good speed. They're a pretty good team, and I think Tom Saratori's done a terrific job with them. And again, you don't want to play them in the playoffs because it'll be awfully difficult.
Let's move to the NCHC. You just mentioned St. Cloud. They're the number 6 team in the nation. Yep. They host Miami of Ohio this weekend.
Yeah, off 2 weeks in a row. Due to COVID. Once, 2 weeks ago they were supposed to play UMD, and that got canceled or postponed because of problems with the UMD program. The past weekend they were scheduled to go up to Denver. There were problems on the St. Cloud team. So it's been a long layoff for them, and now, but for them, they play Miami this weekend at home. Miami is last in the NCHC, which kind of surprises me. I thought they'd be a little bit better. Maybe they're starting to play a little bit better. They took UMD to overtime last weekend, but it'll be good to get St. Cloud back on the ice. They are losing 2 players to the Olympic team. Good for them, Nick Perbix and Sam Henches. So
Totino Grace alum.
Yes, congrats to him.
He's the second best hockey player to come out of Totino Grace after me.
After you. And his father,
right behind me.
His father, Brandon, Where did he play college hockey? St. Thomas.
Did he? I did not know that.
And he was one of the first Division III players to sign an NHL contract with the Montreal Canadiens. So
Really?
yes.
Did you know the first ever guy to sign with the Minnesota Wild when they became a new was
yes,
Steve Aronson.
And yep, absolutely.
He was a couple years older than me at St. Thomas.
And he was a Tommy, yes.
And he scared the hell out of me.
I'm sure he did.
Yes.
He was a good player. He was a really good player.
Very good player.
Yeah.
Very good player.
And so, it'll be good for St. Cloud to get back. You never know how a team's going to react after having that layoff. You would think that there'd be, just, going crazy to get out there. So it'll be interesting series.
Number 7, Minnesota Duluth. They are at Nebraska Omaha.
Yeah, they've been up and down. I was concerned about their ability to score goals this year. They lost 111 off their team last year, and how do you replace that? And they don't have the firepower up front. Not that they play that style of game, but ultimately you still have to score goals to win. And they've had a hard time scoring goals as of late. And I'm sure that's concerning. They still play really good D. They still have really good goaltending. That's the backbone of their team and their structure. But they got to find a way to score goals, especially on the road. If they don't, it's going to be tough for them.
Pat, great to chat with you as always. I might spring you with a mystery guest next week on this podcast.
That would be outstanding. Have a great week, Brandon.
Right,
Thank you.
Pat. He's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Molesky. This has been another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. Thank you so much for watching on the KFAN YouTube channel or for listening on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.